I'd like to call our March 6, 2025 Roanoke County School Board work session to order. Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am. Item 2.01, announcement of changes to the agenda. We do not have any. Item 2.02, approval of agenda. Do we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Madam Clerk?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am. Item 3.01, request to approve the exception to policy 3.44 for the purpose of naming the William Byrd High School softball field in honor of Coach Greg Barton, Dr. Jamie Soltis, and Mr. Travis Anderson.
Madam Chair, members of the board, Dr. Nicely, thank you. Mr. Anderson and I are here tonight to present, or I guess this afternoon, to present William Byrd High School's request for an exception to policy 3.44, which is the name of schools and school facilities policy, to name the William Byrd High School softball field after Mr. Greg Barton, to call it Greg Barton Field, in honor of the current coach. The reason we're asking for or they're requesting the exception is because school facilities such as athletic fields, according to policy, may be named for individuals who have not been actively employed by the school division within the previous year. That's the way the policy is written. So the admin reg outlines, along with the policy, what steps that Mr. Anderson had to take. I forgot his name for a second. That Mr. Anderson had to take. So I'm going to let him walk through what the steps were, and then we'll elaborate from there.
So good afternoon. After receiving a request by one of our community members about naming the field after Coach Barton, I explained with that person the policy and where we would have to go with that. I mentioned, we do look for community support as well, especially this being an exception to the policy. We would really want to see a lot of community support. And you'll actually notice in the room here around y'all, this is just a subset of some of the people that could be here, today. I was appreciative that they were able to make time to come out. So after meeting with that community member, we went ahead and formed a school committee, and that included parents, alumni, students, and staff members. And at that meeting, we discussed making the recommendation or not making the recommendation based off his qualifications, not whether the school board would grant an exception or not. So we did it solely based off Coach Barton and his accolades and his standing in the community. So obviously the committee recommended that the softball field be named after him. He also did provide, before we had that committee meeting, his agreement in writing to myself as well. And then once I had those items, I forwarded them to Dr. Nicely as well, so that he could go ahead and start the division-wide committee to make sure we were in compliance with the policy.
So basically, that's where we came in. So the division-wide policy is comprised of 3 individuals. We had a committee we reviewed just for procedural compliance, and he did follow all the procedures that were outlined in the policy as far as making sure he had community support, those steps. He followed the steps he was supposed to follow. So then that's why we're here today to present it to the board, because we enforce policy, but the board is the one who can make exceptions to the policy.
So I probably need to ask for a motion to make an exception to the policy. Is that the way this will?
I think, you would have to, there's 2 things you want to do. You want to make an exception to the policy, but you also want to actually name the field after him. So you could probably roll that into one motion, but you want to get that language right. But
Okay.
I was wondering, Mr. Anderson, not to put anybody on the spot, but did you have maybe 1 or 2 folks in the room who wanted to say anything, or were they prepared to do that?
I know there were a couple that wanted to. Yes.
We don't have time for everybody, but if you had a couple.
Yes, sir.
I'll speak. Thank you to the members of the board, Madam Chair. I know this is a work session and not a public meeting, but my name is Alan Wood. I'm a longtime resident of Benton. alumni of William Byrd High School, current assistant coach to the softball program. And my comments will be brief, but I'd like to first thank you all for our latest addition of a protective net at our field. Our young ladies and our athletes and our coaches and our fans were having to go down in a very tough environment to retrieve softballs, and with the county's help, with Mr. Cagle's, our board approval, I know Mr. Brian Dotson was very instrumental with getting this net approved. The difference is amazing. I mean, it's already, our girls are not down in a tough area, in a wooded area with ticks, snakes, wildlife, trying to retrieve softballs. So I want to first thank you all for that. We cannot explain how much difference it's made. So that's first. Second is I want to speak on behalf of Greg Barton. What he means to his staff, his community, and most importantly, his athletes. There's not enough time, just flat not enough time to say what needs to be said. The difference that he has made with the softball program is just, it's uncomparable. Member of his 2019 state championship, one of his athletes here, Megan Grant, she's here. Several of the members of the coaching staff are here, brought a state championship to our high school in 2019. And again, just the impact that Coach Barton has made on us. When he, became the coach of William Byrd softball, there was no fences, there was no dugouts, there was no concession stands, there was no nothing. And now, if we would love for you to come out and see what our facilities are, and that was just literally from the leadership of Coach Barton and with the support of Roanoke County Schools. So, thank you for your time. I appreciate it, and I really hope you consider this great honor for this great coach. Thank you.
Yes, absolutely.
So I'm Lindsay Barton Perch. I'm Greg's daughter. I was one of his athletes. Was one of the athletes when there was no fence, there was no concession stand, and the dugouts had a family of skunks that lived in them, and it was, not in the most pristine condition. And now we have facilities that, and I'm a teacher at William Byrd Middle School now. We have facilities that we are proud of. We have the ability to host district and regional games and double headers, and we have run clinics for the Benton community. I say we, I did coach with him. I have children of my own now that I coach in the rec program, but moved away from Benton, started my teaching career, and because of the fierce pride in the Benton community that my dad has and has instilled in me, I came back home to Benton to start my family and continue my teaching career. I can attest to the number of hours that he has sacrificed, leaving on weekends and spending Sundays to get fields ready, not just for his varsity program, but the middle school program, for biddy clinics. Just the sacrifice that he has made, not in vain, truly, because you will not find anyone who loves William Byrd and the Benton community more than him. I mean, his license plate even says "Go Bird," which is, if you know him, it's so appropriate and fitting for him. But he has poured his heart and soul and countless number of hours into this field and this program because of the pride he has. And in losing seasons, he is just as prideful about his losing seasons as he is his state championship season. It means everything to him. So, and thank you all so much for allowing us to come and speak on his behalf.
I asked Mr. Anderson if he could speak to some of the highlights as well.
Yes.
Accolades, I'm sorry.
So I know I will miss some things because, I got a lot of communication from community members, especially as they started hearing, what we were discussing. Things that resonated with a lot of people. He literally has, had his blood, sweat, and tears into this program. And that's the biggest thing. The facilities, he has spent hours and hours and hours getting that to where it should be. But it's not just the facilities that he focuses on. That's his same attitude and outlook with dealing with, our young athletes. And, coaches, have a major impact on students' lives. And when you look at what has come through that program, that's through his leadership, that's evidence of his coaching ability. It was already mentioned about the state championship in 2019. That was my first year at Byrd. I'll still never forget it. And how much community spirit that brought with it as well. District championships as well. He's not one that will brag on himself at all. And even with this, we had to pull out, okay, we know you had X number of district championships. We know you had the state championships, and he's not going to brag on himself. So we had to kind of pull some of that information out from him. So again, that speaks to his character, and that's the biggest reason why we wanted to present this to you as well, and definitely feel that he's deserving of the exception to the policy rule.
And real quick, as a member of the community, I'll say a couple things too. I'd like to turn off the video though, because I don't want him to hear a whole lot of what I got saying. So I guess that's not possible. But y'all must know a different Greg Barton because when we're together, that's all I hear is, I did win a state championship. No, and he's doing it out of fun, but he's a great person. I think it's nothing more I can really say except about the person, because he knows softball backwards and forwards now, but he's, as everyone attests here, he's a great community member. He bleeds maroon and orange and Byrd softball, and he loves the girls that come and go from the program. He talks about them. He's got relationships with all of them and keeps up with them when they go to college. And I know Mark's daughter went to college, and he would speak of her often, that she was playing, and different ones of Megan and all of you. I'll hear the names. Some I recognize, and some, I remember the numbers. I don't remember all the names. But Greg has been just being upfront and honest, full disclosure, he's been a great friend. I've, probably been a friend as long as most of any of my friends. And so we go way back, but I don't think you'll find a better person to represent our school, our community, and I think it's a testament to all these folks coming out to speak for it. So I'm in full favor of it, obviously. And if I need to make that motion, I'll go ahead and.
Well, we're not taking action today. This is just the information piece.
So we're just going to make the motion at the next meeting.
At the March 20th meeting.
Okay. All right.
Dr. Solters, before we make an exception or consider making an exception to policy, I think it might be helpful. I know Tim was on the board when that policy was established, and I came on the board shortly thereafter. But I think for the other board members as well as the public, it may be a good idea to just, I think you and Dr. Nicely were on the committee that put that policy together. Maybe just go over the rationale behind the policy and why it was put in place.
Yes, sir. So it was 2017. I do remember this because I was the principal at Glenborough High School and was asked, I think, by Dr. Nicely to be on the committee that the school board had wanted to start. And it was in relation to a couple things. There were facilities being named all over the place, and there were also our policy, correct me if I'm wrong, but our policy really dealt with just schools, not facilities. So it's my understanding that they wanted us to look at also facilities. And I don't really remember if there was one specific situation or whether it was just trying to put in standards and guardrails, which was our task. So we did a lot of work. We did go through and look at policies from all over the state. I think Dr. Nicely did a great, I think he was the chair of the committee. You're asking me to remember a lot of things I can't really remember. But as the chair of the committee, I remember this because Mike Ray was in my group. But we sat and we talked about all these different policies that people had across the state And some had started including facilities in their policies. And I don't know if that was a VSBA change or why that all came about, to include facilities and not just buildings. But at that time, we worked really hard. We got a committee together. The board, I think the direction, if I remember, Dr. Niceman helped me out, was basically they didn't want a policy that was so rigid, but they didn't want a policy that was so loose. Does
You
that
had to
make
be
sense?
dead for 10 years.
Well, is that for the school?
Well, what it
Whatever
was-
the policy was before, you had to be dead for 10 years.
Yeah, and I
I think
remember
it was
what,
previously, maybe.
I think, and I remember what came out of the committee, because it was 5 years at one time, but the board had the option of changing all that, so they took it to 1 year, I believe.
Right. So what happened was, the
School board.
original,
Right.
well, to the policy currently is that, from that point forward, no school buildings would be named for individuals moving forward. And then we dealt with the facilities piece. And I think the committee recommendation that you should, not have to be deceased for 5 years, but to be separated from the school division for 5 years. But then the board settled on a 1 year separation, is where it landed.
So that's kind of the history of what I remember from being on that committee, and I just remember because it was my first time on a committee over here at Central.
You did well.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Well, I can tell you exactly, because two of the board members that are no longer on the board were on that committee with y'all. And a month later, we made an exception to that, right? And so we started that trend, I would say trend or whatever. And, you know, and Coach Pope was a wonderful human being, right? Still obviously is. And Greg's in that same mold. So for me, it's a no-brainer. If, you know, we did it for one, I'm willing to do it again.
Do you think it's a bad policy? I mean, do you think we need to revise it? Do you think we should do away with it?
Well-
I'm not big on making exceptions to policy.
Yeah, so here's the good news about it. It is up for review now as we're reviewing policies, because it's supposed to be every 5 years, and it was 2017 the last time it was reviewed, so we do need to review that policy, and I plan on bringing reviews in April. But with it being a new board, I mean, not all of you, but a bunch of new board members, it might not be a bad idea to form a committee to review this policy to see if you still want the policy or if you want to make like specific criteria. Because there was a lot of debate, I remember this, on how many signatures you'd have to get and all those things, and that ended up not going into the policy.
Remember, David, you asked if they were from North Korea signing the, remember that?
I do
Yeah,
recall
I'm just
that.
making sure you remember
Well,
that.
Tim,
You do recall you voted no against
I
Coach
did
Pope,
vote
too.
no.
hey Tim, you have my support.
Thank
if that's
you.
what you want for your community.
Thank you so much. Jim.
And I'll just say also, Tim, you know, I had talked to you about this, knowing it was going to be on the agenda, and I'm not a big fan of making exceptions. However, there has been precedent set, and this gentleman seems like he was an outstanding citizen to the community. So I will go ahead and support it in light of us moving further, as Dr. Soltis suggested, revamping and looking at the policy, because we can't, as a board, every single time we write a policy, come back with exceptions to policies. Why have a policy if you're going to make exceptions? It's really not a policy then, right? So I would just like us to, if the policy needs to be revamped, we've had 2 instances now, obviously needs to be revamped. So let's
Yeah.
come together as a board, put our heads together, revamp it. But in the meantime, I'd say go ahead and support this gentleman.
I agree.
I agree. Is there any other comments?
No, I agree, Ms. Fashani. I agree, we need to revamp the policy.
They're going as an action item for the March 20th meeting.
And with y'all saying that, you want me to put a committee together
Well,
to start working on that policy?
what, we can do
No
that.
better time than the present.
Before, the committee had 2 school board members on it. It had some principals. Did it have
It had some
parents?
principals that had ADs.
In that list.
We opened it up for parental contact, because I remember reading somebody's emails, and they were the ones suggesting like a certain number of signatures and those types of things, so we were trying to take into consideration. But,
And we had, and just for further clarification, the 2 school board members that were on that committee, I actually voted to make that exception a month later. So, not it's just the way it is. Look, I tell it like it is. It just is the way it is.
I remember.
Yeah, and I told it like that then.
And I left the division before that happened. But I've come back.
Telling the truth gets me
Yeah,
in
telling the
trouble a
truth.
lot.
And it wasn't the three of us. We were not the wafflers.
No, it
We hold
wasn't.
firm, I can
No,
tell you that.
No.
My
appreciate you.
advice would be to, put this under like a superintendent's committee.
Yeah.
But if the board would like to have a couple members of the board, I think that's probably wise, that you want to appoint to that, or that you want to include. We could do that informally, and then I could put together the remaining group, if you'd like to go that direction.
I'll support that.
And I'll just say for the record, I don't know Coach Barton. I'm sure he's a wonderful individual. I do know Coach Pope, and it was a difficult decision to have to vote no against him. But there are two things I'm thankful for today: that they didn't bring baseball bats with them, and I won't be here for that meeting to have to vote no. So
And I kind of knew where we were going anyway, so, but thank you.
Any more comments? Good.
We're good.
They probably want
Thank
to
you
stay
all.
for the rest of
I
this
know.
unless
Thank
y'all
you all
want
for
to. You're welcome
being
to.
Y'all your civic around. Last, let's say go Terriers, by the way.
Go Terriers.
Nice to meet you as well.
Good luck in y'all's season this year.
Thank you. Y'all, you're welcome, guys. Thank y'all.
Oh, you are? Would you?
I bet you.
Thank you, guys.
Y'all
Bye.
take care.
See, Kendall. Thank you. Hey, Kendall, how's that new active board? See Jeff right here?
So Madam Chair,
Give him the thumbs
Madam
up.
Chair, if you just want to kind of work it out and just let me know.
Oh, really?
Maybe you
You're
appoint the two members to serve on the committee. Yeah, but y'all can work it out and we can figure out later.
Absolutely agree with
Okay, we'll figure it out.
We did it. Put these in full.
Yeah, I'll do it.
it's a terrible.
Sure.
I'm just trying to get
That is good.
Item 3.02, major construction project updates. Mr. Todd Kagels, Mr. Wes Mitchell, and Mr. Kamal Khalil.
It's my pleasure, as usual, to introduce Wes Mitchell and Kamal Khalil, the project managers from Skanska at the CTE Center and the elementary schools respectively, and they're going to give us updates on our progress at the elementary schools and the CTE Center.
Good afternoon, everybody. We'll start off with CTE. A lot going on. Activities have really picked up in the last month. Still mass grading. It's a huge site, so that continues with cutting and backfilling. All the rock has been removed from the pad. So all the mass grading is in and around the building pad, so all the major construction activities can continue. So they're mainly hammering away at the stockpiled rock that was removed from the pad, using it as fill on the slopes around the building. With that, the building pads are moving along well. The area C, which we'll show you in the next slide, which is the far end of the building, is about 95% complete as far as the building pad. So that's all been brought up to subgrade. Just have to, I think we've got one little section, about a 6-inch lift, and we need to proof roll it. Couldn't do it today because of the weather, but it's right there, ready to start digging footers. Get back. As far as footings go for the rest of the building, area D and A are complete. Area D is actually getting prepped for a slab pour next week, so Monday and Tuesday we'll be pouring that. So all of the MEP in that area has been excavated, put in, tested for pressure, backfilled. Now we're putting in our gravel and vapor barrier so we can pour the slabs in D next week. A's moving right along with the MEP, so electrical, underground plumbing in that area. We're about probably 90% complete on that, so we'll be able to start on slabs there as well in the near future. In area B, what we got going on right now is just digging our footings. Probably about 50% on that. They kind of took a break. Our concrete guys moved from doing that over to Area D to prep the slab. So as soon as that's done next week, they'll finish that up before moving into Area C with that same activity. So other than that, there is a low block going on that will pick up next week. In Area A, it's complete, and D, that's a predecessor to our slab, so that'll be the next activity in A. 2 courses a block, our foundation walls. So just some pictures here. Our elevator pit, you can see the amount of rebar, reinforcement, sump pump in there. That's been poured for our elevator. That's a pretty big chunk of concrete that they put in there. This is just a picture of our foundation walls in Area D. This has to be completed before we do the slabs with the insulation and moisture block as well. And then the second picture is all of our electrical raceways in Area D moving into Area A. This will just be electrical distribution for the whole building. Area C pad, you can see how that's coming along there on the left. We've almost got it up to grade, and then the picture on the right is just that lower slope. It'll be a continuous slope up till the end of that building pad, so still quite a bit of work to do there. And that's all for CTE activities.
And this might be a good time to just mention that we have a tour scheduled that you've all been invited to, 1:30 on Wednesday. So if you haven't responded to that and you'd like to attend, please just do that. And we're going to go out there and take a look at all the hard work these guys have been doing over the last several months.
Next week will be a good week because it's scheduled for Wednesday, is that right?
Yes, sir.
And by then, the Area D slab should be completed.
So, well, that's what I was gonna ask. When will the slabs all be completed, pretty much?
I don't know the date for all of them. I think middle of April probably, just based on how we're moving. And then that is on schedule. I just don't have the day in
Well, I'm just
head,
thinking, once you get those in, it's
Yeah.
amazing how you'll see it just pop right up.
Yep, and as soon as the slab in D is poured, our masons will have another crew to start going vertical with our block.
So exciting.
So that's when you'll start seeing the walls potentially go up next week, depending on their staffing, because they're hot on the electrician's tails on that stuff.
That's awesome.
You still
Thank
have a camera going up that takes video so we can speed it up?
We do.
We do, okay. That's like one of my favorite things to watch.
Yeah.
Good afternoon. We'll talk about the schools now. On account of the civil work, which is outside work, we're doing the water line, a drainage system, and corrugated pipe installed for the drainage system. All of that is being done next to the dining room and the kitchen. They're all brand new. They're not renovation. They're brand new buildings. On the admin, like in the front of the main school building, we're doing concrete pad, which we did that last time, and now we're going on the block. We'll see in the pictures. I'll show you how far we got. On Glen Cove, some of you maybe passed to drive by. You'll see installation of concrete structures by the pond. That's outside work. We're waiting on the other side to relocate a pole that we could restart that excavation part on that sloped area. On the inside work, it's getting really exciting because we're going to finish probably by the end of the month, phase 1A. And so far we did most of the electrical, maybe 95%. All the devices are done, fire alarms, sprinkler systems, light fixtures, panel work, ceiling grids and tiles, painting, plumbing, walls. I mean, all of it is pretty much done. By the next, maybe, we're gonna get furniture, maybe the 14th on Glen Cove, and probably the end of the month for Condiv. We're gonna do a slab tomorrow morning on, just to go back to Condiv for the dining area, which will be like, maybe like 4 trucks or so. And we're moving along fine, it's just a matter of time.
It's awful exciting to drive by there and see those
Yeah.
walls going up.
Isn't it?
Yeah, and as I was coming by Glen Cove and seeing the excavation and everything kind of playing in.
The one on the left is the water line tied into the box, the structural box. The one on the right, it's the hallway. You could see the tile being installed. You could see the paint on the left and the right walls.
And these are, the nature of putting together a presentation and them having to send it to me, and, there's a delay here because those floors
That's
are
correct.
all done.
That's correct.
Right.
And I told them before that I hate that because I want to, like today, you could walk into the hall and say, "Ooh, what?" A lot of changes.
And we do have some
so
updates
exciting.
at the end.
Good.
I threw in at the last second before we came down here.
That's the front of the building on the admin. It's also almost done, but it shows it a little bit not done. The electrical also, they got an inspection today, but they had to postpone it till Monday. We should be fine on the electrical too. That's the outside on the left, also like structural work. They were doing it today and they were done with it. But I took that picture maybe 3 days ago. This, on the right, it's plumbing for the area we're gonna pour tomorrow. And on the left, that's also like 3 days ago. It shows the tile. Okay, these cabinets are for Condiv. We received them a couple of days ago. We don't have them for Glen Cove, and that's why the difference in getting the furniture on a different time.
And you get an idea where we are. The new windows are in, the casework is in, the floors are in, the ceilings, the
Doors, we should be
lighting.
getting doors on maybe on the 10th.
I think this
Monday.
is just amazing that, when you look at when you guys started talking about wanting individualized classrooms and not having the open concept, to now we're getting ready to turn these over here in a couple of weeks, and we'll have at least, part of that completed and occupied. I think the progress has been amazing.
Phenomenal, and you can actually see through these windows.
Yeah.
That's I mean, we're good. Simple, but it's true. It's amazing how nice it looks.
Same thing it could be said about these two pictures.
Any questions on any of those? That's all we have on the major construction projects.
Thank you, guys.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Item 3.03, Penforest Elementary School surplus property sale, Mr. Todd Kegels.
We were approached by a prospective business owner, I guess actually a current business owner, but they intend to purchase the property outlined here in red. This is Penforest Elementary School up here at the top. The school board owns this little piece of property right here behind the old school building, outlined in white. And the prospective development of this business looks like this. So our little piece of property is right here at the top, would sort of be this square that I'm outlining. I don't know if you can see it or not, but it's right there at the top. The citizen asked if we would be willing to sell her that piece of property to go with the business. They need it for parking and for access around to that side of the building. I spoke with Ms. Clemens to just make sure we had support from the member from that area, and we do. If we have consensus among the board to be interested in selling that piece of property, the first step would be to designate it as surplus. And assuming that we have consensus to do that, I would like to put that on the consent agenda for the next meeting. Now, that's only to designate it as surplus. Then we would move forward with an appraisal, and of course you would still have to take action on the actual deal once we negotiate a price and so forth. So this is just to get the process started. And again, if we have consensus, we'd like to put that on the consent agenda for the next meeting to designate it as surplus.
Works really.
Just a quick word about this, 'cause I think it's pretty special. You know, that he referred to as an old school. That's the old Starkey School. I'm sure if you've driven by there, you've seen that. So that used to be a Roanoke County school back in the day, and I wish I knew more about the history. But also just a word about this business. So it's Chris's Coffee and Custard, which are currently located over in the industrial area in southeast Roanoke. And so Chris was one of our K-Spring graduates, and he and his mom and some other special friends have started this business, and encourage folks to support that. Certainly a nice thing to see, and wish them all the best in their new location if you all approve it.
A couple of things about that. So she is fantastic, and her son is really fun. And this business has been very successful. And their family is from the Penn Forest area. That's where their kids went to school, and they're really well known over there. And so I think the community will certainly embrace this business being there. Another thing about the school building is that the gentleman that owns it now has some really large pictures of what it looked like at the time. And so those will go in that front room when you first walk in. So that's pretty cool too.
It is cool.
Yeah.
And just to be clear, Mr. King, that's property that we, other than mowing, we don't really utilize, correct?
No, just occasionally some overflow parking from the school, but it was, we did discuss that with them before we brought this to Ms. Clemens to make sure the school was okay with us doing that, just to kind of gauge, interest, and they were fine with giving up that little bit of overflow. And I think they've actually, Chris's Custards that offered to kind of let them continue to use
Yeah,
that
so
for
I spoke to Ms.
overflow parking.
Griffin the other night, and she said that for now it probably will remain grass, and they will still be able to utilize it for events, because they do have some large events and the parking can be an issue, but they'll still be able to use that. So
I think it's fantastic.
I do too. I'm excited for her.
It's a great location, real close to
Right.
Penn Forest.
Yeah.
Lots of after-school activities taking place, I'm sure, over there.
Yeah.
And it's good custard.
Any objections to that to go on consent? So,
That's all I have this evening.
Thank you. Item 3.04, redistricting Mountain View Elementary School and Burlington Elementary School update. Ms. Tammy Newcomb.
I wanted to give you an update on, I don't know why it's not showing over here, on where we are with the redistricting idea that we have with Burlington and Mountain View. So those are the areas right there. Again, just to remind you, on the right, the little yellow circle, that's Mountain View. At the top is Burlington, and then the other area in yellow is the area that we're looking at shifting over to Mountain View. Those are the streets that are listed, and those are the two areas that would be affected by the change. Again, they're both Northside feeder school. All the schools are feeder schools for Northside Middle and Northside High. Those were the enrollment numbers that we looked at in balancing the two schools to 90%. Those are the number of kids currently that would be affected. Again, Mountain View is an excellent school, as is Burlington. I wanted to point this out again also. The current fourth grade students would be allowed to stay at Burlington. They would have to provide transportation, and that affects 5 students. And speaking to Ms. Graham and to Ms. Close, those students who are wanting to stay, those fifth graders, rising fifth graders, we would ask the parents put that in writing so that the registration would not be affected. Going into fifth grade, we would count for them into the classrooms. And then an in-county transfer option, the other students who are affected, they could, like all other students in Roanoke County, apply for in-county a transfer, but we would not provide transportation. And it is approval based on academic attendance, discipline, and also if there's room. So if a classroom is, that's why we're balancing the schools But you saw with the numbers, some classes are a little bit larger than the other, so it would depend on available space. And then this is where we are. So we have sent letters to all families affected, and we did invite them to the March 11th meeting. I also sent letters to both principals and to Ms. Graham, especially when we had kindergarten registration. Not that this has been approved, but just to let rising, incoming kindergartners know that this could be a possibility if it's approved, so that it's no surprise. We also, at the meeting, are going to allow folks to take a tour, of course, if they want to. And we are recommended that the school board take action in March 20th, after the meeting on March 11th, so that we could start with the enrollment. I was asked the question, it made sense to look into this. Students who are currently at Burlington that will be moved will not have to go to Mountain View to re-enroll. We will take care of that transfer of records for them, so that task would not be placed on the families affected. And that we would hope that this, if approved, that we would start next year.
This doesn't affect any Title I stuff, right?
Mm-mm.
Okay.
Or academic. I had Mr. Williams run academics, make sure that both schools would still be at the high accreditation status that they are. So.
Will you be able to share the feedback from the March 11th meeting with us prior to that March 20th meeting?
I think there's another school board work session. I think it's on
Might be a budget session.
Yeah, it might be a budget session.
Right, we do have one scheduled for the 13th, which is next Thursday, so, we could, with your permission, give a report briefly at that, if it's okay. Certainly can do that.
I've received 0 phone calls.
Yeah, I was going to ask the question. I think I knew the answer to this. Always knew the answer before you asked, right? But I know when we've done this before, of course, the letter we send out invites parents to call if they have concerns and questions. So I did ask Ms. Newcomb how many calls she had gotten, and the answer is
0.
right. So hopefully a good sign.
Yes.
Can I ask one quick question at a higher level than where we're at? At 90% and still developments coming into those schools, will the Cove Road housing, will that go to Glen Cove, or will that go down to
Down here at the corner between
I guess that would
CPS,
go
that's
to
Glen Cove.
So my only concern is that at 90% for both of those schools, are we in a situation where we need to start thinking about, that's starting to bump capacity?
Well, I have the numbers. Let me grab it. For all of our schools. And many of our schools are hitting, right around the 80s and above. So with Glen Cove, they're already pretty packed. According to these numbers in August of 24, they were almost at 100%.
There's really nothing else around Burlington or Mountain View to move. I'm just thinking down the road at some point if we keep
And I'm not sure how much extra
adding-
space Glen Cove's getting with renovation.
Right. Well, and keep in mind, the previous redistricting that we've done, we've tried to, this direction, have more students go out to Mason's Cove from Glen Cove. So that line is actually almost right here to our property here now for Glen Cove. And I think I saw in the news that there's maybe a new development that might be in the Burlington area, about the city line. I think I saw something about that. Just, again, thinking ahead to your point, Mr. Greenway, in terms of our CIP, I don't think Burlington's the next school on our list. I think Northside Middle is actually ahead of that. But it might be something that, we want to re-examine in terms of order. Explain Burlington is...
I just worry about the capacities of these elementary schools, for instance, I think at Cundiff we're going to increase just a little bit of capacity. I'm not sure about the Glen Cove, but it looks like that area is getting pretty congested. I don't know if, again, this is for a later conversation, but to be thinking about, I don't know if there's another neighborhood or two that, and Mr. Hudson, this is more your side, I'm not trying to get in, but I don't know if there's another neighborhood or two that might go to Mason Cove, and then maybe a neighborhood over here that you shift up, I don't know. I'm just, either that or I think we do need to step up a little sooner, if we can. I don't know how, we could do that, but
You know, one of the things about Mason's Cove that was sort of surprising to me, because I didn't know it, is they currently have, I don't know what the number is today, but they were at over 200. Well, their capacity, full capacity is 239 at Mason's
wow.
Cove.
Yeah, so those are issues just to be thinking about. We're talking about some declining enrollments, but some of these schools have, have
Pockets.
Increased.
I thought Mason's Cove was bigger than 239 capacity.
Well,
I thought,
let's see, it says, the gross for Roanoke County, is, according to Roanoke County, capacity is 239, the VDOE is 274. But still, they're low, I mean, compared to the other schools.
One thing to think about is we're grossly undercapacitated at Bonsack. I don't know where those lines are, for Mountain View or, that's.
It's Reed Mountain.
Yeah, so I don't know if there's, something you could do to shift some kid. I don't know. I'm just throwing that
Mount
out there.
Pleasant's the same way. It's under capacity too. So.
Right. Well, but that's not near.
Right. Not
I'm just trying to think of something closer.
But in terms of shifting, yeah.
Yeah.
It's a puzzle. I mean, our geography's tough with
Yeah.
mountains and our districts. Of course, at Donuts, we don't have a lot of contiguous attendance zones where you can kind of easily reconfigure
Right,
things.
yeah.
It's challenging.
No, I get it. Yep.
Okay.
I'll
Thank
leave.
you.
I'll leave that to the next board.
Thank you.
Hey, Ron, stop it.
So is it okay to plan at this point to go ahead and have that on? You probably want it as an action item given the gravity of that, or
It's whatever.
I'm
you
fine
have.
with that.
whatever you guys think.
And still bring that information to the budget.
Yeah, maybe we can give
Right.
updates at that meeting and then plan for an action item on the 20th. That way, if somebody wanted to come speak to it, they could.
Right. Okay. Item 3.05, 2025-2026, budget work session number 3, Ms. Susan Peterson.
But I get it. I mean,
Just where my mouse is. Am I near it, Chuck?
You're in the blue right now. You're right above the seal. Now you're up in the corner.
Ah, now I'm down in the other one. I don't know why this always is hard to swap the screen. Sorry as I get this worked out.
You want a snack, Jamie?
He's on camera. He's not you right now.
There's some Snickers over here.
Sorry about that. Good afternoon, Madam Chairman, members of the board. That's where I like to go first, so I can get all that taken care of and swapped before everyone shows up. I would like to go ahead and get started with our 2025-2026 third budget work session. On the agenda, we'll look at some current year information regarding health insurance and where we stand now. We'll take a deep dive into some proposed health insurance plans going forward. We'll have a revenue update, and we will also go over changes to the department budgets. And I would like to recognize that Ms. Smith and Ms. Harlan are webinared in, so they're on the side mirrors or window cameras so that you can see them. They're really here for questions if you have any questions as we go through this. So for the current year update, I did want to get in front of you You know, I am running the health insurance reserve number on a weekly basis. This graph is a representation as of not the close of February, but through most of the activity of February. I think the only activity that has not been captured was probably insurance, hasn't been posted yet, because we are in the middle of the closing process now. Looking at this, following the same process that we have followed in the past, we are still projecting. One thing that changed literally like 2 minutes ago, I was planning on going to the Board of Supervisors meeting on Tuesday to get our ordinance approved for the $1 million transfer from general fund to the health insurance fund. And there's been a snafu with the ordinance, and so that's been pushed back. And so instead of having the $1 million transfer appear in March, that can't happen before April. So March 25th will be when I will present it, and then April 8th is when the second reading will occur, and we can get that transferred, moved over. So that doesn't really affect us in those 2 months because we do have positive balances in February, March, and April. Well, we'll barely have a positive balance in March without the million. It'll be 179,804. So we'll be cutting it pretty close to overspending. But that's just a snafu in timing of when we can get that million transferred. The bigger concern on this graph is that if we still stay at about a $2 million, 2.6 million in 1 month kind of projection for our claims expense, we do look to have negative reserves at the end of the year. So that's still disconcerting to me. So I do want to go ahead and follow up on, at our first board work session, I shared short-term and long-term strategies. And I just wanted to follow up and let you know kind of where we went with each of those. So the short-term strategies included requesting the Board of Supervisors to approve the $1 million payroll lapse, transfer from general fund over to the health insurance fund. As I said, we are in the process of working out the request for that. The second one was a request to appropriate new funds to facilities for $191,000. This was an Avis check from the prior year. So it's a refund of an expenditure that we don't have the expenditure on the books anymore because we've closed the books and we've closed the project. And so we need to recognize it as new money. I'm showing it in our balances for minor capital because that was where it was spent out of. So it's not in there now, but when the ordinance occurs, that's where we will put it and what the balance will look like. The third item was the 92,290 transfer to the OPEB trust, and I did present that earlier that we have a new plan, we have a whole new actuarial report, and we will hold off on the transfer for the current year and the next year, and we will start the transfer in FY27. And then just wanting to let you have a look at where the major and minor capital balances are sitting right now. Going back and kind of taking a look at our payroll lapse. So I have updated this from what I shared previously. This payroll lapse shows what we have actually realized from the beginning of the year through February. That's 2.8 million. The payroll lapse for open positions from March 1st to the end of the year is 1.7. So that gives us just under 4.6 million of payroll lapse. Still having a revenue deficit. That number did not change. Still have an exposure for the PTO sick days. That number came down about 5,000. We still have a maximum exposure for electricity overruns. That number came down by about 100,000. What I did add to this, I mentioned at the last meeting, there were the Senate and the House brought two different recommendations for a bonus to our employees for other SOQ funded positions, support and instructional. One of them recommended it for next year, and one of them recommended it be paid out in June. And so at the time, I had calculated how much it would cost if it occurred in June based on the current filled positions, and that's how much it would cost if we maxed out the bonus and gave it to everybody, to all open positions. They have agreed in the General Assembly that this will be in June, and that's why I put it on here. And they have also made the ruling, so you'll see down at the bottom, that we can reduce it, and so that we don't have to have the local impact. So we could just take the total bonus that we receive, divide it by number of people, and then reduce the budget by that. So that would be up to if there's any change or however you would like us to structure that. Of course, this is all pending, the final approval by the governor. This is just kind of what's laid out in front of him now. And then the last item is the transfer to the health insurance fund that I've mentioned a couple of times. And so based on this, our net remaining payroll lapse for the current year is just about $500,000, which is tight and is disconcerting. I wouldn't want to see it any lower than that.
Ms. Peterson, I was going to emphasize one thing. You go ahead, sir.
So I just want to make sure I understand exactly what's going on. So the 191, 524, even though we're putting it in minor capital, that is coming right back out with pending approval, right?
Coming back out to where?
Going back, or going to insurance reserves. Didn't we agree? Is that the piece for Byrd?
No one agreed to that? No.
No, I know they haven't agreed to it, but I thought, so we were talking about the million, we were talking about the 192,000, which I assume is this piece here.
Right. That's not. Y'all have not said you wanted that to go into health insurance reserves.
Well, that's what you brought forward in previous sessions, if I understood.
No, we were just going to put it in minor capital.
Okay, just leave
well,
it there.
And in fairness to you, Mr. Greenway, I think this slide, the wording might be a little confusing because we're saying short-term strategies. That's on there just to account for what, some money coming in. That's really not one of the short-term strategies for the health insurance reserves, unless y'all decide to do that. But for right now.
Well, those three right there, I thought were going in. So we're saying the 192 is not. It's just going to stay in CI.
Right. The reason that's up there is because Ms. Peterson has to take that to the Board of Supervisors as part of the ordinance. So she lumped that up there to say this is part of the ordinance she's doing. But for right now, it's parked in minor capital. Y'all could decide to do something later, but right now it's going to be parked in minor capital.
I just want to make sure I understand.
Sure.
And so the OPEB will go into insurance reserves.
Well, we're just not.
It's an avoided
If we agree
cost.
to it.
We're just not going to
We're
spend
just not going to pay that
Okay.
out.
So it's not money coming in, it's money that we're not taking out.
Well, okay, yeah, so I guess
Just
I'm
for
not saying
clarity.
it correctly, but it's a piece that's going to help in that.
Yes, sir.
Not a big, but it's a piece.
Yes, sir.
And then down here at the 931,503, explain that. Are you saying we are going to have to pay that out, or you just explained it? But I
No,
didn't.
sir.
Now, I wanted to jump in on that, if I may.
Please.
So, because I think it's important for not only the board to understand, but anybody listening. Whenever, we're always grateful, right? First of all, the General Assembly and the governor have not agreed on a budget. So this bonus piece was in the General Assembly's budget, but they've not come to terms in terms of what the budget is. So it's out there hanging as a possibility. But what I wanted to point out was, and this is just how this stuff works, whenever the General Assembly or anybody says, hey, we want to give this extra bonus, that's wonderful, but it only goes towards certain positions, like teachers and so forth, which is very deserved. Typically, as a school division, we foot the rest of the bill to say, well, all staff members would get it. So that, correct me if I'm wrong, Ms. Peterson, that 931,503, if we did that, that would be at the full amount. But that would be for all employees, not just the ones we get reimbursed for. Is that correct?
That would be correct.
I just want to be clear about that.
That's our bill.
That's right.
Okay.
And you don't have to do that, but that's typically what we would do.
Yeah,
Okay.
and they really specifically said that there is not a match on this bonus. And so it is not intended to harm a school division, but if we wanted to give the full amount that they
That's
initially
what we would-
recommended, that is the full amount that we would cover for all non-SOQ support and instructional positions.
Gotcha. Okay. I just want to make sure I understood those
What
pieces.
happened with that bill? That just to do away with that? With the SOQ? Cap grant, yeah.
Well, yeah, so the General Assembly, what you're talking about is the support cap. Let's eliminate that, which is, as a reminder, that was the artificial cap that was put on back during the Great Recession. It's lingered, which means that not even all SOQ required positions are reimbursed. They put an artificial cap on that. So this year, for the first time, the General Assembly actually took some significant action to eliminate that. But again, it's going to be hung up in terms of if the General Assembly and the governor can come to terms on a final budget. So, and just for clarity, if they can't reach an agreement, we are in the second year of the biennium, which means that it'd be a stay put budget, and most of this would go away. It would just be whatever we would normally have gotten anyway, not any sort of increases.
What would that 931 amount to? I don't know how many employees we have total. We're pretty close.
The cost of the,
Well, the 931, I mean, you're saying if that's what we have, right?
That'd be for all
That
employees.
would
That's what we would give. That's
be
what it
our
would cost to give it to all
portion.
That would be
employees.
our cost of bill.
Yes, sir.
yeah. And that's based on calculating at 1,000, so the net amount coming out for the employee would see 646.
Okay.
After taxes.
So then I wanted to revisit kind of the long-term strategies that I had laid out previously. We'll go through these pretty quick. We had looked at changing the plan design, and yes, we have done that. We have added a third option for your consideration, and this is an HMO option. Just to clarify, with an HMO option, we are offering the Health Keepers provider group. This is not changing the design of the plan at all. We look at adding the 2% margin to premiums, and yes, the 2% margin was included in the claims estimate cost that was provided to us. Eliminate the school couple rate. Actually, I kind of did the opposite of that. Hearing that we wanted to help our employees more, I actually lowered that rate for them, but I could always go back and rerun the numbers and change that to however the school board sees fit. Charge a higher amount for the premium for retirees. I actually have to think about that a little bit more. We decided not to do that because the school board specifically added a little bit of money to the retiree EWIP program, and I was concerned that we would unravel that benefit if we changed the premium structure and charged a little bit more to the retirees. And then going fully insured, we did look at that, but we have not gone that way right now. It would increase our cost by 5 to 7.5%, which would be to the tune of an additional 1.2 or $1.8 million. So then additional long-term strategies was to learn about the hybrid insurance, and we did. We received information from Ms. Harlan and Ms. Smith about different plans, and this ultimately led to us adding the HMO option. We looked at the aggregate stop loss and learned that we did drop this many years ago because it just really wasn't effective. It is costed so that we would only be covered at 125% over what the estimated claim was, and so we wouldn't even hit that this year. So that was not going to be beneficial to us to look into. Looking at the return on investment for the medical clinic, and the school board voted to discontinue that already. And then looking at the OPEB trust, and we provided information regarding how to fund this in the best manner possible at a previous work session. And so we did agree to start funding that in FY27. So that'll give us kind of current year and next year reprieve of funding towards that. And then recommended putting $2.2 million to the fleet transfer, or the fleet transfer, moving it and not funding the fleet for a year. The 2.2 is the recurring transfer. When you look back on the finance slide, it'll say 2.7. That includes a $500,000 for the activity fund buses. That was a 1-year transfer to the fleet. We did add another $433,397 to the transfer.
Staff, I'd like to add one more piece that we could consider as a strategy. And again, this is one y'all would have to jump on board with, and I'm sure I'm not going to be popular. But as I've stated before, we have actual revenue versus our projected revenue that we get on our revenue sharing plan. Let me just, and then you can tell me.
I have a slide on that.
Okay. All right. Well, all I want to say is,
If it's the $17 million, I have a whole slide on that.
okay. but I'm gonna still say this here. So, and I'm just throwing this out there as an idea and an option. $17 million over the last 4 years. We're not saying go back 20 years and give us, the actual, but I don't know why we wouldn't get paid off actual revenue instead of projected. So what I would offer, and I would say this is a nice compromise, and hopefully they would agree, is of that 17 million, I'm just using rough numbers, approximately 40% of that would be 6.8 million, which would be our share. If we ask Ms. Peterson to also go to the meeting and ask, would they give us half of that 6.8, that 3.4 million? We take 2 of that and we put it in healthcare reserves, which would help us tremendously. And then we take the other 1.4 million and we use that for staff raises or bonuses or however we do that. So, and I'm not trying to get ahead of you on this, but I want to, as we think about this, there's a lot of revenue we didn't get in our piece. And so I'd like to just throw that as an option. That's half of the revenue we should have been, I feel like, should have been paid on for actual revenue for the last 4 years. And that's a deal for them in my mind. We get some relief. And then going forward, I think we ought to be paid off the actual revenue. I think it ought to be something that we adjust at the end of the year when we know the actual revenue. I think the schools, if we're talking about over the last decade, we went from essentially 43% of shared revenue down to about 41% of shared revenue. If we use actual numbers, we might be at 39% of shared revenue. So just something for the board to think about. I'd be all for asking them to give us half of that as a way not to go back and ask for 6.8 million or whatever it would be. And I think that, and they're certainly flush with cash as they've, added to revenue about 15 million last year, 10 million this year. So they should have that money, and I think we should participate. So, sorry, but I just wanted to throw that out as one of the things we could talk about.
Sure. I'm sorry, I wasn't trying to cut you off. I just wanted you aware that I do have that slide.
No,
so
thank
we can go
you.
over that.
Thank you.
So that was it for the current situation. Moving into our planning for FY26. I just want to kind of lay the background work for, since we last met, we've done a lot of kind of research. And here are some of the things that you're going to see when I share the premium structure. And by the way, in your book, at the back of it, there are 2 breakout pages. One with the report you already received, and then one with the total revenues and expenditure changes. That may or may not be an easier way for you to look at that as we walk through the next few slides. So first, the third plan option will be added, or we're looking to possibly add. This is a Healthkeepers HMO. It will have a $3,400 deductible, and we ran all of the numbers that you're going to look at using a 25% migration rate. And when you see the premiums, hopefully you understand why we were thinking a little positive on that end. We will add, if desired by the school board, health savings account. This will be attached to the Health Keepers plan. The donation to the health savings account would be $1,200 from the employer for single coverage and $2,400 for non-single coverage. We took a revisit to the employer contributions and changed the structure of this. We will vary the employer contribution by insurance coverage tier, which means if you're single or single plus minor or single on down that way, so that will change by tier, but it will be the same in every option. So you'll be able to see in each plan, if you look at the single coverage, the employer contribution is the same for each plan. As I mentioned earlier, the family school couple, we increased the employer contribution to provide higher savings for our employees. For the non-wellness rates, we did eliminate the rates themselves, but we'll keep the wellness incentives and continue to have the wellness program, but we will tie that to the actual contribution that is provided by the employer for either the HRA or the HSA. And then just to let everyone know, for the purposes of a simple analysis, we do look at 12-month monthly rates when we go through these. So we're looking at moving one or two of our plans to the possibly moving a plan and adding a plan for the Health Keepers HMO provider group. USI went out and worked with Anthem to determine the disruption is actually quite minimal. We have 98.4% of our providers who are currently in the PPO are in the HMO network. We did also determine that if you're already seeing a specialist, you do not have to have a referral. The network is actually an open network, not a closed network, and so our employees will not have to get a referral to go see a specialist in the HMO plan. But they do have to live or reside in Virginia. So we have some out-of-state retirees, and we didn't want to lock them out, and so it is recommended that we do keep a PPO as one of our plan options. And then you can see the provider names and how many individuals are affected. I will add that we have heard at least one of the chiropractors on here that is a very popular one, indicated that he uses a Chiro Care. And so any employee who is considering going to the HMO should probably reach out to their chiropractor specifically, because evidently this is a plan that they have to help with their own costs, and our employee is not going to see a difference in their bill for that individual chiropractor, and I don't know if that's common in the industry.
Do you have a total number there? I mean, I see the number by each doctor, but
I initially added them up, but I don't know that it's because they're different, so you could have the same person in different, like, I don't know that this represents individual people. They're not unique necessarily. Like, you could have a person in multiple. If I remember right, it was 99 in total.
You could see a physical therapist and a chiropractor at the same time.
no.
So I think it's 99 in total.
It's really not a huge disruption. It's minimal. It's actually a heck of a lot better than I thought it would be.
You're good at mental math. I'm surprised you can't just see
Yeah,
that
I
now.
thought about it. And,
You feeling lazy?
yeah, it was easier to ask Susan.
Please don't quote me that it's 99. I think it could be 99.
Okay.
I added at one point and then I deleted the total. So, I also wanted to, since we are introducing the health savings account, we did share this information before, but I did want to reiterate the similarities and differences between the health savings account and the health reimbursement account. You can see the employer contributions for the HRA will be $5,000, $1,000. For the HSA, we are proposing $1,200, $2,400.
I just want to correct one thing you just said. It's actually 500 and 1,000, not 5,000. Just in case anybody's listening.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I think I've seen too many numbers. The employee cannot contribute to the HRA at all, but they can contribute an additional amount to the health savings account. The amounts listed on the slide, $4,385.50. I'm actually scared to say numbers now. That is the total amount that they can contribute to an HSA, and that includes our amount. And so if it's just the employee and not including a spouse, because if a spouse has an HSA too, the spouse is the family is going to have to look at like their HSA, our HSA, and then our contribution to look at their own family amount as to how much they can actually contribute. So it's not the total amount of the $4,300.
So Ms. Peterson, somebody asked that question earlier. So a spouse could work for a different company and have an HSA, that's fine, but their total amounts in their HSA might still be governed by the IRS limits. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
So if their employer contributes and we contribute,
You max out at some point.
you could max out. I think we've said this enough. The account owner for the HRA is the school division, and the account owner for the HSA is the employee. They both will cover qualified medical, prescription, and dental, vision expenses. The health savings can be used for outside of our plan. And I think that's more geared towards like after you leave the plan. The deductible or out-of-pocket max in the health reimbursement account, that just follows whatever your health plan is. But in the health savings account, the IRS laws govern what we have to set that as in our health insurance plan. So there's a little fine difference there, which is why it has to be attached to a health plan that has a very high deductible. So the FSA, the flexible spending account, you can have one of those and use it with the HRA. However, that is replaced by the HSA. And so you would not have FSA for flexible spending. Now, this is not dependent care spending. This is only flexible care spending, and a health savings account at the same time. You would have one or the other. Also, kind of along that vein, any of our employees who currently have the health reimbursement account, if they wanted to move from the HRA into the HSA, there are very specific rules that you cannot have the contributions into the HSA account while you are drawing out of the HRA. So it would be a recommendation that you spend down whatever you can out of your HRA so that you can start fresh and clean into your HSA account if you were making that transition. And there is going to be a lot of guidance that's going to have to be provided to our employees so that they understand that. The rollover for the HRA is $25,000, and there really isn't one for the HSA because you keep everything that's in there. Under all of them, if you leave the plan, if you retire or if you terminate, there are no new contributions under either investment vehicle. On the HRA side, if you leave the plan or terminate, you may use what's in there for COBRA, but then once you stop COBRA, then the amount reverts back to Roanoke County Public Schools. But if you retire, you get to continue to use that for qualified medical expenses. On the health savings account, you can just continue to use that for qualified medical expenses. A lot of information. So let's get into the two different options. We've run the numbers to provide two different options. The health insurance plans themselves, so slide 16 and then like 3 slides back are basically the same slide, because I wanted you to understand that the only thing that changed is the network for the purple group. So real quick on this slide, we've got the 3 options that we have put forth for your consideration. Keeping the KeyCare PPO 1000, the same plan. Keeping the KeyCare PPO 2000, the same plan. And I would like to remind you that the in-network maximum out-of-pocket will rise to the correct level next year. And then the HealthKeepers HMO 3400 will be the new high deductible plan. And you can see all the different criteria for that, the out-of-pocket maxes and mins. One thing that's really important to understand that is different between the HRA and HSA is when you're looking at this slide and you look at the next to the bottom row, the retail prescription copays, it is really important to understand that on an HRA, the employee pays the copay. In an HSA, the employee pays the entire cost of the prescription until the employee hits their deductible, and then the copay goes into effect. That is something they really need to think about when they jump to this plan. So then here are the premiums. I've got in the left-hand 2 boxes are what we have in 2025, the current premiums. And then in the right 3 groups, and I apologize, I forgot the labels for the new HealthKeepers, but they're in the same order, so single, employee plus minor, employee plus spouse, family, and family or school couple. So you can see what those amounts look like. I've got the employee share in the blue, and then the employer share in the black and the total premium. You can see the HRA contribution, it's in blue because it's going to be given, probably shouldn't have chosen blue for them, but that's what the employer is going to put into their account. And then you can see the change for the employee if they stayed lateral with the same plan. Again, so when we adopted the second plan for the 2000, we budgeted a migration of 20% to go into the 2000 plan, and we actually experienced, currently there are 42% in that plan. So we were a little more aggressive going to the third plan, and we are estimating 40% will stay in the KeyCare 1000, 35% will go to the KeyCare 2000, and 25% will try the new Healthkeepers 3400 plan. Important thing to note, so just to share what I meant earlier. So the employer share for the single was $740 all the way down. That's what I meant by it changes by tier, but it stays the same by plan. Employer plus minor, the contribution's $888 all the way down. So you can kind of see that was one thing. One thing to note, the employee will not have a cost if they join as a single person for the health keepers. We tried to make that a free plan for them. And then they will also, if they participate in wellness, get the $1,200 contribution into their HSA. I'll go ahead and move to the next one. So this is the proposed option number B. Again, the big difference is just that this becomes a provider network for Healthkeepers HMO 2000, but the plan is exactly the same. It operates the same. So then our premiums, you can see, are here. The premiums for the KeyCare 1000 do not change. The premiums for the KeyCare 3400 are the same between both options. So really, it's the purple that you want to look at to determine which is more appeasing. Or if you would prefer we go back to the drawing board and bring back something different, we can always do that as well. So then when we costed this out, option A over here was having the middle plan as a PPO. Option B was having the middle plan as an HMO. The big differences here are your premiums are going to be less on option B, and your paid claims are going to be less on option B. But this kind of lays out the revenue coming into the plan and then the expenditures going out. This is what the health insurance fund will look like. We are budgeting that there will be no balance at the end of the current year, and so this puts $4 million into the fund so that we are starting off with that $4 million planned amount.
That's what the rates are based off of now?
It is. Well,
This we're zeroed out?
for what this is based off, this is for the future rates that I just showed in the past couple of slides.
Right, based off zeroed out.
Yes.
Okay.
Any question? And there's not a big difference down here because at the end of the day, your premiums go up on both plans, your claims go up on both plans, and to go from the PPO to the HMO, it's going to be about a $200,000 savings on both the premiums and the costs. And so there is only a small differential at the bottom.
So I don't know if we need to explain about the clinic piece in there. Do we need to explain what that figure is and all that, or does everybody understand that?
So I went ahead and included 3 months of the clinic since they are just starting the discussions about the withdrawal. And initially they have in there that it will be a 6-month lead to terminate. So that would put us at having to pay 3 months in next year. That is not a firm number because we don't know what the negotiations are going to carve out and look like.
And then next year, that 200 would go away.
Correct.
Right, and the county has started that, they've initiated that process. We know it's underway.
Good.
We got word.
So a couple other line items, if I may. The computer software, Alex, last year I think it was 30,000. This year it's 37. It's already gone up.
That's just with a cost inflator and 5%.
Yeah, well, it's gone up. Right?
It's just an estimate.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
So we don't know
So
yet.
all of my budget numbers are estimates. So I just put a
Okay.
5% estimated increase on there.
Well, even, okay. I think it should be something that they offer for free, in my opinion. I know it's an AI program. I talked to Vistar, who's used an AI program similar to that. They did it last year for the first time. They thought it was not valuable. They had people who used it, and I know our numbers indicate that people did use it, but they thought that it made it as clear as mud, was what she said to me. It just didn't give as much information as they had hoped, so they're not continuing using that. So I don't know if that's, I don't want to say it's a gimmick. I know it's another way for these industries to make more money, but I think we should come together as a board. We're trying to cut prices or costs where we can, and right there, to me, that's a little bit of savings. In addition, the flu shots for $25,000. I asked my contact about this as well, and they're actually looking at Kroger Health coming in to their different offices and giving out flu shots using a clinic model there. And so she was going to get me some pricing on that, but I think we should investigate that. It seems like they do that as a free service through health or Kroger Health, and then they bill it through the insurance company. And if anybody right now wanted to go get a flu shot, you could at Walgreens with this insurance for free. So I don't know why we wouldn't try to maximize our dollars on that.
So it's billed through the employee's insurance? Is that what you're
Yes,
saying?
yeah. So, I mean, we're paying for it one way or the other, but through this insurance that we currently have, I think you get flu shots for free.
I asked
through
Ms.
that.
Peterson about that. Apparently this is something we've done for forever.
We've done this for a long time, and what we do, this is just a benefit for our employees. We either contract with Carillion or Lewis Gale. It's been both companies, and they will visit every school and set up shop in every school so that any employee who chooses to benefit can.
Is that a set contract price, or do they charge per person? Because I know that the figure was like 700 and some people who actually did it.
That is correct. I think there is a price per injection, and then there's also a price for the time for the person to come out. We do contract that out.
So
And,
is
like,
that
do
a
the
flat
RFP.
rate we pay, or do we pay actually less than that? That's just a budget number.
We paid, so that's a couple thousand higher. We paid like $21,340.
So it's based on how many people
It
receive
is.
the service. Okay.
So then they still bill our insurance for the flu shot itself?
So if our insurance is paying for it anyway, I asked my contact to get back to me and find out what she could, because every single healthcare worker at Carillion has to get a flu shot. It's just how it is. So they go around to all of the 20 properties that we have at Vistar, and they give out the shots. They set up a clinic. They say between 2 and 4 on this date, we're going to be there. Just come on down. And so there's really no pressure. It's just if you want it. And I think it's important to offer, and because Kroger is so invested in our community, that's why they do it. So it just, I'll find out for you. It
Sure.
might be some way to save some money.
Thank you.
I have a question, Susan. Is there a way to know, I know like 4 million is what's recommended. So is there a way to know if we are able to do something like Mr. Greenway had talked about, figuring out some money from somewhere to add into that account, how much that would reduce the rates? Because the rates are based off of to get to the 4 million. So is there a way to, if we found $1 million somewhere and we're able to add it to that, how much would reduce the increase that we're seeing now?
So what you need to understand on these numbers is the rates that have been presented include a $2.6 million one-time transfer in. And so we're getting to the 4 million with a one-time transfer in. The premiums are not designed to give us a $4 million reserve in total.
Right, I understand.
Right.
I'm just asking, like, if 4 million is the recommended that we keep in the account. So if we're able to get to that 4 million or somewhere close, is there a way to, because with the increase, and I don't know what exactly what it is, I remember it was going to be like 170, I don't know what it is a month. I can do the math in my head, but if we're able to add more money into that through some cost savings measures, is there a way to know how much it would reduce the rate on our employee?
I mean, I think that's a hard, I can go back and look into that.
All right.
So do you like the housekeeper's plan? I mean, the rates are a lot lower.
Yeah, I think I like option B.
I like option
because it
B.
gives everybody an opportunity. You have the 1,000, the 2,000, the 34. People can make the best. It gives them options because some people may be in a situation where they want the 1,000 because of whatever medical that they have to deal with, and then the 2,000. I think it's a good mix. I think you've done a good job with this. I appreciate that. I'm just looking at if we're able to do some cost savings like we're looking at, or maybe be able to ask for some money like Mr. Greenway's talking about. Would it help reduce the rates on the employees? Because my main concern, like I've spoken the last couple meetings, is we're not sure on raises yet, but I definitely don't want to see anybody take a pay cut because they're having to pay more for insurance.
Absolutely, and I might, Mr. Hudson, I might even take that just a little bit in a different direction. If we take that money, maybe in terms of raises to offset the insurance piece, it would help in the VRS piece for our staff in a different way. I don't know. But I totally agree with what you're saying. Absolutely. And can I ask one more thing? The professional services, is that the USI piece?
Correct.
I think they ought to donate half of that back for not offering health keepers earlier. I know y'all are listening, but I can't believe we haven't been offered this in the years past. I can't imagine that.
Well, to be honest with you, I'm really happy that I was at a conference and met a gentleman from Scott Insurance, told him our predicament, and he said, well, have you considered housekeepers? I said, I don't even know what you're talking about. I mean, I started to do my homework on it. And we sat in that meeting, and they knew that we needed cost savings. They knew we were in a situation that wasn't desirable, and it took me and a couple others to ask a couple questions to get 2 housekeepers. So that's just really disappointing to me.
Well, we identified that in the last meeting by, the HMO, the health keeper, same thing. That if over 90% are already participating, I don't know. I don't want to belabor this, but my gosh, it just seems like this was a no-brainer for several years for our, to offer to our staff. But anyway, I'll let it go.
And there are other divisions in the county, I did a search, who have been using housekeepers for quite some time. And I think what happens in little Roanoke, Southwest Virginia, is we get comfortable with doing what our neighbors do. And we need to not always do what our neighbors do. We need to sometimes think outside the box a little bit and ask what they're doing in other counties.
Part of this is, just been historically driven with our tie to the county and those conversations. Like that's what's driven part of this. I do have a question, Ms. Peterson, just to Mr. Hudson's point, and I don't mean to get us askew here, but we're also, does the 2.63, that's just from the fleet transfer and some other things, does that include the additional that we're hoping to do out of the general fund, depending upon which version of the state budget gets passed?
That's going to be up here.
Oh, okay, so that's in the premiums.
So the transfer from the general fund ends up being about $5.4 million. It's made up of an amount that's sitting in the premiums here, and then the general fund transfer here.
Yeah. So I think when she goes over the recommended budget, you'll see there is additional money that she's proposing to put in there in addition to the 2.6.
But
When I think about the computer software cost, I mean, there's going to be some confusion that comes in when we're adding a third option, and either it's going to be staff here or hopefully, I mean, I think employees are going to have a lot of questions. Almost 1,500 employees used Alex last year.
We should ask them what they thought of it instead of just get the numbers.
We could do a survey or
I mean,
something.
I would ask them if they thought it was useful, because the comment that I heard was it was as clear as mud. So usage means only so much. We should really find out if there's value to the usage.
Right. And the other thing we have talked about, Dr. Nicely and I, several times, is providing information in the form of some sort of video that would be at every faculty meeting, so that everyone would be getting the same message, and hopefully we would spend some time explaining the difference between them, especially adding the HSA because that's so different and new. So I feel like that's still something that we're planning to do that would help.
Would you be interested in having us conduct a survey of employees? I think we want to focus in on the ones who actually use it and
Well,
see what they thought. We could do that.
1,400, is that what you said?
That was how many times it was visited.
Yeah, we don't
don't
have
know
a people.
individual.
Oh, well,
Right.
that would be, can we get that information? Because somebody could have done it twice.
Well, I mean, I think the survey, are you saying you would
We
ask
could do a
how
survey.
people
Did you
felt
use it?
about
If you
but
did, what'd you think?
I think that the number is a little confusing because 1,400 people,
Yeah.
it's not 1,400 people, it's 1,400 visits to the site. So we don't
Right.
know
Oh.
if it was one person that visited 10 times or, you know what I'm saying? So that
Right.
number's a
Yeah.
little,
And of course, by doing a survey, you don't know if you're going to get every single person to respond. But if you're interested in getting feedback, we're happy to
Well, you have to
try
find
that.
out if they actually use the service.
Right.
So
I'm only going by what I've heard, and I've done my homework. I've asked people out, you know, that have used it, and they said it was more of a gimmick, a way for insurance companies to make money, was what they said, or you know, and really wasn't that useful. So I just don't want to spend money. There's not value on it just because somebody tells me I should do it. I want to do my homework on it and make sure that there's some meaning behind it. I mean, $37,000 doesn't sound like a lot of money. $25,000 doesn't sound like a lot of money in the big picture, right? But we're getting down to the nitty gritty here. Every dollar counts, and we have to be good stewards of our taxpayer dollars. And I'm just not going to sign off on something just because some company told me it was available to use. Just don't think that's smart.
so are those two pieces of information we could find out in terms of a survey of usefulness? And then is there a way to extract the information? There's no way to know how many.
So let me clarify. You have a report that there were 1,457 visits.
Right.
Alex goes, when you enter Alex, you enter your own personal prescriptions. You enter your own personal risk assessment. You enter your own personal information. And so since you're entering that, you go in anonymous. There is no way they
So there's
do
no way
not.
for us to know how many different people use it.
Yeah,
We
so
only
they
know
do not
visits.
track different people. Like they don't track it that way, because that was the whole point of the program. Is it calculates how much are you going to pay on your prescription? How in a year, how much are you going to spend? And then it provides the information, the feedback to you in your personal instance, in either graph format or in Word format. And so it's designed to do a certain task in a certain way to provide individual feedback. That is the purpose of it.
Yeah, and I'll just add to that. AI is incredible. I mean, it has advanced so fast, right? So a simple AI search, if you put in your medicines and said, my blood sugar is 300 on a average basis, what else can I do to improve my healthcare outcomes? It will ask you what medicines you're on, how many milligrams of metformin you're taking, Jardiance, all these things, and give you suggestions. Now, it's not a medical doctor, but it'll do data analytics for something like this too. So we don't necessarily have to use Alex. You could use Grok, you could use Google AI, you could use all these different AIs, and it will give you probably the same amount of information, but for free. So if anybody's listening, I'm sure I'll get a call from Roanoke Times saying how much I'm endorsing AI, and I'm not. And I'm just saying it's a tool that you can use.
Would you all be interested in some survey data? I'm happy to do it if you're interested in that information.
Yeah.
Well, it might
We'd
give
have-
us more information than just usage. It would tell us if people thought it
Yeah,
was
we'd have to
actually
have a quick
helpful.
turnaround because we're
Right.
for
Running
the
out
next.
of time.
But if folks want their opinion heard, then they need to respond. So we'll put it out.
And hopefully they'll be truthful if they used it.
So then at the last meeting, there was also a question about when we changed stop loss rates and put it out to bid. In 2008, we moved from a stop loss balance, this is individual stop loss, from 150 to 200. We went out to RFP with a new vendor won the contract in 2018. And then in 2022 was when we went from the 200,000 to the 250 stop loss. We will receive additional information on what the renewal will look like, and we can look at that at the different levels if we need to increase it or decrease it. But that won't be coming until April. And so I think at this time, the rest of this presentation is really not insurance related. So I would ask if you have any questions for Ms. Harlan and Ms. Smith, we can ask them now, or if you're comfortable, if we could let them sign off and go on.
I'm fine.
All right. Well, thank you. I don't know if you can even see me. Probably not. Thank you for joining Ms. Smith and Ms. Harlan, and for your time. And we'll let you go ahead and sign off.
Shelley wants to back
So Susan, they can listen to this meeting anyway, but how much did we just get charged for them to sit on that phone call? $400 an hour?
Yes.
Yeah. I just want everybody to understand that. We just spent $400 for them to sit on that phone call.
I agree, especially not.
As a phone call, we shouldn't have had half, in my opinion.
Especially not to offer HMO before this year.
Jeez.
Should I let that go?
I can't let it
I
go
said,
either,
okay,
Tim, but
I
we're
will.
gonna try.
I'll let it go.
So we'll move on to the revenues. Unless, do you want to wait for Dr. Soltis to come back?
We do not. He'll be right back. But in all seriousness, I mean, feedback on, what's proposed and so forth. I mean, obviously, been a lot of thought. You all had a lot of input into where to go. I'm just pleased that, people have options. In fact, more options than ever before. And, everybody's situation is unique. But I think people do have options, hopefully, that, can, best fit their need. And I think the addition of this, the HSA with the high deductible, I think that's at a $0 premium for a single employee. That's something we've never been able to do before. So
I think on the HSA too, we need to publicize, advertise.
There's a lot of education that
that's
needs to happen.
a tax benefit piece as well that they've never had, and staff has never had, and I think that's a really nice piece to the puzzle.
Just need to make sure they understand what those options are.
Right.
To Shelley's piece, I guess, and Mr. Linden's, but I think putting out some kind of video or whatever, however that training tool is, to go to each school, I think it's a great idea.
Mr. Lamberger's already has his wheels turning
That's a
about
great
that. So
idea.
he's
Chuck
got
can
it.
put together some really good stuff.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chuck.
Waiting on you?
Susan wanted to wait for you.
Thank you, Sue. I apologize.
Roger, you didn't take your phone with you.
No, I did not.
Great, so I guess we're ready to move on to revenue updates. I don't know that we need to beleaguer the formula. I do have the full formula in here. I've gone over this in the past, and I think you've all seen it. We calculate a 3-year average of ADN and population, and then we run that through to determine a net allocation change. We add a payroll factor in. And then the heart of what you want to look at is on the next slide on page 25. This is where you can see the first line is the property and local taxes. This is the amount that is set aside to be shared. It is identified as what is shared. They pull out the Comprehensive Services Act and then all of these other kind of economic development incentives that are not revenue that they would keep. And then this bottom line, the 232 is what they apply the percentage to that was calculated in the prior page. At the end of the day, we come down and the 3076 is how much our transfer will increase. But they also give us the CSA amount and we give it back. And so in total, it'll be 3826. You'll see the 750 on an expenditure too. So the totaling.
Ms. Peterson. So the calculations based on property and taxes, local taxes. I'm trying to match up the sheet they give us, and I guess that's not going to work. I'm not sure where on their slides are projected revenue, they're increasing $9.5 million. So our change is 9, but these numbers just don't make sense to me compared to what they've got, but nonetheless, so 9 and 9.5. So that's the projected, so there's about 600,000, I would assume, that less on the revenue side this year that projected to, or that's their number. So that they've got projected here 9.6. Again, I don't know, you know, this has got business license taxes, sales tax, some of that, I'm not sure how all that
I can
fleshes out.
bring to you the exact lines that make this up. They have other revenue that is not run through the revenue sharing agreement. And so the difference in what you see on their
That's probably-
total and this amount would be the lines that they do not include in the revenue sharing agreement.
Okay.
We've all heard about this revenue sharing agreement that was put together back with Drew Barano and Joe McNamara, I think, spearheaded it on those two sides, but I don't know that I've ever seen a physical copy of that. Is that something that you could send, or is that available somewhere for us to look at and actually read through to see
The actual formula?
the formula? Was there ever, I mean, obviously it talks about ADM and things along those lines. I mean, is there a document, or is it just a formula?
I think it is spelled out in their comprehensive financial policy, so I can get a copy of that and send that to you. And I do get an Excel spreadsheet from them that I can share as well.
I know
Then we
it's
can
been a
follow.
while since it's been tweaked. I think that was last under when Mr. Gates was county administrator, is that right?
It was Dr. Kilo was here. and
Okay.
That's
I
when
know
we
at some
were-
point they added in a different, like, student enrollment factor versus county population factor
They
that.
knocked us down a couple percent because of the ADM.
Right.
So all our costs went down, so that's how they decided to give us less revenue, because we didn't need that money. Is that facetious? I don't know. Maybe.
Yes, I'll send that out to
Yeah,
you guys.
thank you.
That was a good question, David.
You're shocked too.
Sorry, it was a good question.
It was a good one.
I don't say it was malice or
Thanks, Cheryl.
not being facetious.
So I did want to go back. Mr. Greenway asked about the actual revenue versus the budgeted revenue. It has been historical that the county will calculate the revenue sharing agreement based on budget. But they, with the exception of 1 year, they have never provided any increase to the school division. My staff went out there and we found the revenues, and we ran the revenues through the tool so that you can see the effect that would have occurred had they trued us up. So just to walk through what this slide looks like, the county revenue surplus is the first in green. This is going to include revenue that is not shared. So the 600,000 that you were referencing before, between the number you saw on their slide and the revenue shared, that's going to be included in this county revenue surplus. And so that number is going to be different than what's shown down here. We found the exact amount that goes through the revenue sharing agreement, and you can see that here. And then the blue is what the revenue sharing agreement was actually based on. And so we found the difference each year. You can see the difference in the actual revenue that was realized that would have been run through the revenue sharing agreement and what was budgeted. So then we ran that through the revenue sharing agreement, and our transfer would have been the one in red as compared to what was in blue. And then what you can see each year, I've kind of shared the difference between 2020 and 2021. Our revenue sharing went down 2.4 million. Here it went up 3.7. Here it went up 6.7 from here to here, and 8.2 from here to here. But then the difference down here is the amount of revenue missed on the school side since the actuals were not shared. In 2021 was the only year that was where that was the year that, if you recall, we slashed everything, the county slashed everything, and we were just scared of the economy. Every school division was right after COVID and coming back. And so they ended up with more revenue, and they provided a mid-year projection increase. And if I recall correctly, I think we helped use that to help subsidize a bonus that we provided from pandemic grants at that time. And so if you add each of the years since 2020, it is the 17 million that Mr. Greenway was referencing earlier.
So the 17 million is actually, is that our 40% piece? Is that
Yes.
what you're? Okay.
Yes.
So I kind of found that up before. If it's 17 million that was actual revenue, good Lord, give us 10 and that would be a deal. Unless nobody ever agrees with that, but I mean, I don't know why we wouldn't get actual revenue.
Tim, I'm surprised you're not putting an interest rate on that.
Yeah, no kid. Well, I tried to do that years
you try to
ago
figure
with
that out? I thought
CIP.
you would.
I did. I tried to do that with CIP a few years ago, and
I'm coming up with all types of good stuff.
All right, so moving on, I have added, I forgot to make it yellow, but I have added the Roanoke County increase in here. And this is where the next several slides, if you pull out the second sheet, that's 2 pages. This sheet shows everything on the next several slides by department, and it might be easier to follow along. So the first section is your estimated revenues. I am showing the governor's revenue budget and the Senate and House separate, so you can see there is a significant difference in how much is coming between the two. And so it would be my recommendation that if we do anything, we really adopt a budget on the governor's budget. I think there is a lot of not connecting between the governor and the General Assembly at this point. So I would be scared to budget more than what we suspect may be coming our way. And in fact, as Dr. Nicely had mentioned earlier, the governor may adopt a stay put budget where we already have a budget for next year in the biennium. Last year, he adopted a 2-year budget. So that may be what we fall back to. If that is the case, instead of having the 846,125, that number would be $555,001. And so if there is no changes, there's no agreement, and he wants us to stick with what he already approved last year, this number would come down by 291,124. So just something to keep in mind. I'd love to have 4 million plus, but we'll just see what comes down the pike. So moving into the expenditure side again, what you'll see on this sheet, the first 2 lines of any department will be the column reduction or the column transfer from this page. Looking down at the secondary instruction, we did add back 5,000 from their reduction so that they could fund opportunity ready graduation cords going forward for our students in this wonderful new program.
I like that.
So that was added back.
Recognition, my recognition is due.
Moving on, in the finance department, so this changed. The CSA transfer was added. So this was, if you recall, back on the revenues, that was part of the revenue that we received from the county, and then we pay it back. I also added a line that, depending on what the governor does, this may or may not be accepted. But if House Bill 1017 is approved by the governor, what this does is it says at the end of every school year, the school division has to pay off all unpaid debt. Currently our policy is we pay off unpaid meal debt. Did I forget meal? This is about meal debt. Currently we do pay it off using general fund money if a student has left the division, they've graduated, or they've transferred to another school division. But what this bill does is it says at the end of every school year, we wipe out all unpaid meal debt. So that would be any student that has unpaid meal debt. And so we don't have enough money to cover that right now. We're running around I think 120,000 is what we think it's gonna be at the end of the school
We
year.
gotta find a better way to take care of that before it gets to become debt. I know you're working on it. I can't imagine that.
All the laws from.
I know, but
prohibit you
just
from-
notification, just bombard them with text messages. I don't know. There's gotta be something.
Our system is set up to send text messages. I'm not sure the parents could probably, opt out of that.
I got the
And we send letters.
I get, yeah, you have the lower here. Well, if we could do it, I would suggest it. I mean, send them a text, your student's health or diet, whatever it's called, meal balances, this much money. Why not?
So moving to the next page, under human resources, at the last school board meeting, there were a significant number of positions that were retired or intended to leave the system. So we had HR go back and provide all of those positions back to midpoint. Unfortunately, it went the wrong direction. Usually when we do that, your folks at the higher end of the scale are leaving. When we ran this, the folks at the lower end of the scale seem to be the ones leaving. And so we have, this amount is higher than what I presented before. And so just to remind you, if we do give a one-step, it would cost $750,000 because we do have the lap sitting in there for the positions, just getting them back to basic. And so that's all we would need. If we can, and if you're looking on this page, that's the amount that I have in the governor's column. So we could fund that if we get the governor's budget. If we wanted to shift the scale by 1.5%, we would need 2.8 million, but we would not use the 750. So 750 is not used, 2.8 is what we need. So that's why I don't have tables on subtotals on the slides. You can follow along over here to see how they total up. And that's why you have them in two different columns on your other work paper. Eliminating 19 positions will free up almost 1.3 million. We have been asked to increase the paid time off payout by another 100,000, so that went to 350. So on the insurance that we ran before, the 2.6 million is included in the premium number, and so that is like scheduled additional premiums that we will pay based off of the rate structure on top of what we have set aside now. The 3.8 million was just to balance the budget, and every extra dollar, that's really run it in the second column to get you to the zero to show how much more we could put in there really to shore up our reserves. So that could be something I could run through to try and achieve a reduction in the premiums if you wanted to look at that. There was additional discussion on the transportation special ed route manager, and that position was kind of realigned on the pay scale, so that came down a slightly bit. There was a need to add a nurse at the Glenver school, so that was 82,120. And really, those are the changes that we have. I don't think we need any decisions made tonight, but we are hoping to bring to you next Thursday the superintendent's budget. So between now and then, we'll need direction if there is a desire for us to look at a different premium structure, or what on the list you want to add or remove or change up. And really, that's really all I have. The next thing is the March 13th work session. We adopt the budget March 20th. The last day for the governor's action is March 24th. They reconvene on April 2nd, and we present our budget on April 8th. So that's all I have.
One thing to keep in mind, and we've mentioned this before, if the county side were to make any adjustments in the real estate rate, we have asked, what what's the approximate amount that would affect us. So I have no idea what they have in mind, or, you know, that's up to them if they're gonna do that or not. That, I think that would happen in April. But for example, if it were lowered a penny, we think that would reduce our revenues by about $500,000. So we might, if that, we'd have to come back, obviously, if that happened, and adopt a, you know, revised budget, if, you know, if that were to happen. So just be aware.
I don't want to belabor the point again, but I want to, if we're ever going to do it, we need to decide that we want to ask for some of that revenue from our counterparts now, because once we get past this, houses and property taxes are not going to go up like they did the last few years. So I think it's incumbent upon us to decide if we want to ask for some of that revenue from the actual revenue. We can obviously use it, as Mr. Hudson said, to offset health insurance rates or raises or what have you.
That's where I think seeing a copy of what was agreed to would be helpful.
We'll put on that.
If they've told you something, why don't you just tell
I
us?
have not heard a thing.
I can't believe you haven't had that discussion.
I've asked for it, and I was told to get it from Miss Peterson.
So,
Oh, so you did it.
so yeah, he's asked for it, trust me.
Do we have anything else?
Susan, thank you.
Thank
I know
you.
this
Yeah,
is a lot
thank
of
you.
work, and I really do appreciate it.
We're gonna let her go home tonight.
Yeah. What do you have to know about the consensus of the board regarding the options?
Yeah, well, that's, you really need to, that's the purpose of today's meeting, right?
Right.
So you to discuss that. So if you want us to make any adjustments on any of this, whether the budget side or, you know, the health insurance side, we really do need to bring back a final proposal next week so that you can kind of, you know, gel around, then take an action at the regular board meeting.
Can we think about that a day or two and send it?
Yeah, sure,
Yeah,
but
so-
just, I mean, you know, just so that we can bring back a solid proposal for next Thursday.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you. Meeting adjourned.